Oh, here we are. I think we're live now. All righty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Legal Lunch and Learn. This is a weekly live show where we ask an expert your questions on a legal topic. My name is Cindy, and I am a staff attorney here at Maryland Legal Aid. Joining us today is our chief attorney and an expert on public benefits, Sunny Desai.
Hi, everyone.
Our topic today is unemployment insurance. So please feel free to put your questions about unemployment benefits in the comment section down below, and we'll be answering them later on in the show. So if you don't feel comfortable about posting a question in a public forum, we also have our Director of Community Lawyering Initiative here, Attorney Megan McDermott.
Hi, everyone.
She will be reading your questions and organizing them, and we'll be asking those questions to Sunny later on in the show. So before we get started, I do have some disclaimers. Remember, if you do have an immediate civil legal issue, you should be contacting us, and we'll have our contact info in the comment section down below. And I'm sorry, I know that we do have people from out of Maryland here, so this unfortunately is only for Maryland residents. And another disclaimer is that just because we are answering your questions today, it does not create an attorney-client relationship between us or any of the attorneys here at Maryland Legal Aid. So if you do want to talk to an attorney one-on-one to field your legal questions, please contact us directly with our contact information that's in the comment. So with that out of the way, hello, Sunny, how are ya?
I'm good, how are you?
So just to get us started, you're currently our chief attorney, but I know before that, you were the supervising attorney for our administrative law unit. Can you tell us briefly what kind of cases Maryland Legal Aid take under that unit?
Yeah, absolutely. So not just our unit, but statewide, we do Social Security disability, Social Security overpayment, any kind of public benefits through the Department of Social Services, like TCA, TDAP, food stamps. We also do unemployment benefits, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
All righty. So thank you for that. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to start with more basic questions for those who are considering applying for unemployment insurance, but the law has changed so much and there's a lot of confusion going around. So explain to our audiences what is the regular UI, and there's this thing called PUA. What is that, and what's the difference basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I would say that if you think you're eligible, if you are wanting to apply and you haven't for some reason, I always encourage folks to apply. The worst thing they can do is deny you, right? Aside from your time, you're not losing anything just by applying. So if you think you're eligible, go ahead and apply. And if you get denied, you may be eligible for Maryland Legal Aid Services, and we may be able to represent you after the denial. So as far as unemployment is concerned, for years and years, there was only one unemployment benefit, and that was for folks who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. So traditional example is layoffs. In 2008, for example, there were massive layoffs. A lot of folks applied for and were approved for unemployment because they weren't fired, they just lost their jobs through no fault of their own. That system was really designed to keep people employed or get them re-employed as fast as possible. The benefits were about 50%, or are still about 50% of what your normal wages would be. You were required to enroll in training programs, in job search. You had to make 3 job contacts a week. So it was really designed to get folks some temporary relief while they move between jobs, essentially. As of March of this year, because of the CARES Act, Congress started a whole new type of unemployment benefit called PUA, or Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. That program is sort of designed as a catch-all. For a variety of reasons, folks may not be eligible for the regular unemployment benefit, but they likely would be eligible for PUA. So freelancers, gig workers, independent contractors, folks who are self-employed, None of those folks are eligible for regular unemployment. However, they are eligible for PUA. PUAs doesn't often pay as much as regular unemployment does, but it is a benefit that's an expansion on the traditional benefits, not only in terms of the number of people that are now eligible. Essentially, if you're part of the workforce and you've lost your job due to COVID, you are eligible for some sort of unemployment now. There's also an expansion in the number of weeks that unemployment is available to folks. In Maryland, typically in non-recession times, only 26 weeks of unemployment benefits were available. That's since been expanded to 39 weeks. There was also the temporary expansion in the amount that folks received. The maximum benefit in Maryland was $430. The CARES Act added another $600 on top of that. That's, of course, since expired and has not been renewed. But essentially, the difference between regular unemployment and PUA is you want regular employment if you're eligible, or if you're not eligible, you're probably eligible for PUA. And essentially, if you're in the workforce, you should, and unemployed because of COVID, you should have some sort of unemployment resource available to you.
So let's just clarify that a little bit for our viewers. I know a lot of times people are hesitant to apply because they don't file their taxes. So if a person, let's just start with, if a person's never worked before and they do want to work and they might be able to, can they still apply, or would they just be denied?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a lawyer answer to that, but it depends. It's not there's no hard and fast rule. Essentially, if you lost, if for example, you just entered the workforce, you had a job lined up, you're ready to start it, but because of COVID, that job went away. They're no longer hiring new people. Or you had just started the job and then the pandemic hit and employer laid off a bunch of folks. Or you weren't traditionally the breadwinner in the family, but the breadwinners lost their jobs, so now you have to enter the workforce to try to increase your family's income. So in those instances, you may have never worked in the traditional sense, like 9 to 5, 40 hours a week type of job. Maybe you did some part-time back in the day or something like that, but you weren't part of the workforce as traditionally defined, but you're about to join. If that's the case, then you would be eligible for PUA because you would have had a job, but for the pandemic. So in that instance, yes. But typically, if you're out of the workforce because you've retired, you're disabled, et cetera, then I would say, generally speaking, you cannot be. You likely would not be found eligible for unemployment.
What about people who don't? I want to be really just candid and honest. What about people who work under the table? So they were making money, they just didn't report their income, and now they're no longer able to make that money. What happens then?
Right. So there's two separate issues there. One is you thought you were working over the table, but apparently your employer wasn't doing what they were supposed to and reporting your income to the Department of Labor. That does happen from time to time. If that's the case, you're likely eligible, assuming you work full-time, et cetera, you're likely eligible for regular unemployment. But if the second situation applies where you were just working under the table, you knew your wages weren't getting reported, et cetera, you should still be eligible for PUA. Now, remember, if you apply for unemployment benefits, one of the requirements is every week you have to file a certification, and that filling out that certification is what makes you eligible for the week's benefits. Some of the questions on there do get to the questions do ask about any current income that you're making, and if you're continuing to get paid under the table and applying for unemployment, you do have to report those wages. Otherwise, you get into a fraud situation, which you don't want to be involved in.
What about people who don't make money on a regular basis? For example, a lot of artists, they don't have a steady income. So early in the year, they might make a lot of money, and then it's half a year for nothing, and then they may get a commission for something else. How does it work for them then?
Right. So pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, the answer would be no. You're not eligible for unemployment. You don't. you don't have a W-2, for example. But because of the CARES Act and the creation of PUA, independent contractors or artists, to be specific, they would be eligible under PUA. You would still have to prove your income. You might have to submit your recent 1099 or any bank statements, any kind of proof about ongoing income or most recent income. But you would be eligible under PUA most likely.
So I think earlier you mentioned the PUA payment may have expired. Can you expand on that? What's going on there?
Yeah, so there's the CARES Act, which was, looking back, it was rushed into action, which is great. They introduced 3 new benefits, unemployment benefits specifically. PUA, which we have talked about at some length here, the $600 on top of whatever you're already eligible for. That one, the acronym for that is FPUC, which isn't very helpful, but it's just the $600 that's added on. And the last one is PEUC, which is just the number of weeks that someone is eligible for. So in Maryland, it went from 26 to 39. They added 13 weeks on top of whatever the state's normal eligibility is. So those are the 3 benefits that they expanded under the CARES Act. However, not every benefit is available forever. So PUA, for example, expires at the end of the year, December 31st, unless Congress reauthorizes it for next year. The extra $600 unfortunately expired July 31st, and that's just baked into the statute. So since Congress didn't reauthorize that before July 31st, that benefit has now expired. Of course, nothing's stopping them from renewing that, reinstating that program, but they haven't gotten to it, and doesn't look like there's a lot of movement right now in reinstating it. So unfortunately, that's going to affect a lot of folks, and it might make the upcoming eviction crisis even worse.
So just to clarify, for those who are, receiving that $600 before, and even if do they stop receiving that even if their full 39 weeks hasn't run out?
That's correct. So if you were receiving any unemployment benefits, even $1, the state of Maryland added $600 on top of that, 100% paid by the federal government, right? So it doesn't matter. You're eligible for something, you get $600 on top of that something. The CARES Act authorized that from April through July. So for some folks, I know their applications are still pending. They still haven't received back pay. They lost their jobs. They applied for employment perhaps in May or June, maybe even early July, and they haven't heard back yet. For those folks, through July, you will get your regular unemployment benefit plus the $600. But starting August, you will only get your regular unemployment benefit, or what's known as your weekly benefit amount, WBA.
So if someone only qualifies for the PUA or the federal version of the UA, should they still apply, or is that too late?
No, you can still apply. The PUA does not expire till end of December. The amount you receive, the minimum amount you can receive is around $176. So if you're eligible for PUA, you will get at least that. The maximum is $430. So it's going to range somewhere in between there. It's not going to, some folks were receiving up to $1,030 per week. It's not going to be that high anymore, unless Congress gets their act together.
So speaking of things ending in December, I do hear that they might have been a presidential order to extend it. Have you heard anything about that? Right.
So over the weekend, President Trump issued 4 executive orders, an executive order and 3 memorandum. That's getting into the weeds a little bit, but one of them applied to unemployment benefits. So because Congress wasn't able to reach a deal, President acted unilaterally on his own to try to get some more unemployment benefits to folks who really need it. Unfortunately, it's not nearly enough. It's not even a Band-Aid on the problem because, this is going back to constitution law in law school, I guess. But, the power of the purse belongs to Congress, right? Congress appropriates the funds. Congress collects money, sends it out. So how is the president able to do that? Well, the executive order taps into the disaster relief fund that FEMA operates or Department of Homeland Security operates. And really that money is allocated for hurricanes, flooding, earthquakes, et cetera. And it's about $44 billion, which, in the scheme of things is not that much money. So far, since March, all 50 states have paid out $237 billion in unemployment benefits. So 44 is sort of a drop in the bucket. It's not a long-term solution. By one estimate, it will only last 5 or 6 weeks. And that's once it gets implemented. So, it's not going to be immediate. With the US government, the federal government, you're dealing with a large bureaucracy. So it's going to take some time to implement this program. Even the CARES Act, which was passed in March, in Maryland, the benefit wasn't available until end of April. And Maryland was one of the quicker states in implementing that program. This executive order essentially will create a third unemployment benefit, which will, states will have to adjust their systems, reprogram things. They have to wait on guidance from US Department of Labor. All that takes time. So by one estimate, the earliest that folks will see this benefit will be September. And that's probably for states who are best equipped to roll it out. In Maryland, Governor Hogan yesterday said that they're reviewing whether or not they would participate or whether or not they would be able to implement this executive order. I think what essentially, and I'm reading between the lines a little bit, essentially what they're reviewing is how much is it going to cost the states? How much is the federal government going to kick in? Because state revenues aren't doing so great right now, and any additional burden on states, even if it's minimal from the federal government's perspective, it is more than perhaps some states can afford.
So would this new program, would our viewers right now who are interested in applying for benefits, would they be able to apply for it now, or do they have to wait until this is actually a thing in Maryland?
Right. So the short answer, so I'll caveat, I'll put a big asterisk on this, is that we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? There's going to be there needs to be a lot more guidance from the federal government before we know exactly what this is going to look like. But if it's anything like PUA, so folks were not able to apply for PUA until Maryland set up that system. So April 24th is when PUA went live in Maryland. Prior to that, you could not apply for PUA. So similarly, this probably isn't a program that you need to apply for, but until Maryland gets up and running, folks aren't going to see the money until that happens. And if that happens, there is some talk of some states opting out, and we don't know what Maryland's going to do.
Just for our audience who have been considering, haven't done any research, how does one apply for the benefits?
Right. Yes. We kind of got into the weeds of it a little bit, but the best place to go apply is mdunemployment.com. That's the Maryland Department of Labor's website. When you go on there, there'll be a lot of information, one of which is how to apply. They've created a brand new website called Beacon One Stop. And the theory is, at least it doesn't always work that way, is you file one application and then Department of Labor figures out which benefit applies to you and provides you with that benefit. There's been some glitches to say the least, but the online system seems to be working the best right now. You can also call, and the phone number is on that website as well, mdunemployment.com. But folks are having quite a hard time getting through on the phone lines. So I would, if at all possible, try to apply online.
Right. So now let's talk about people who have applied. And so I hear from clients a lot that they applied in March and it's, now August and they still haven't heard anything, or maybe they, they did get approved, or they're certifying every week and there's still nothing. What can they do?
Right. So it's been a enormous problem. Maryland Department of Labor reported that they've seen a 5,000% increase in demand. So that's quite overwhelming. I'm not sure if any agency would be able to handle that. But with that, there's still been a lot of issues, preventable issues from my perspective. One of which is that there are certain folks whose application just can't fly through, right? It's not, there's other questions that need to be asked, and there's some investigation that Department of Labor needs to do. And that's federally mandated. They can't just waive that. They can't just say, oh, it's a pandemic, we'll just give them money. They're not allowed to do that. They could lose the entire funding if they did that. So certain cases are time sensitive, but the problem is, since the phone lines aren't getting through, people are very frustrated. There was, in early May through June, really, some folks were waiting 8 hours on hold to then just be disconnected. So it was very problematic. So what we've tried to do at Legal Aid is try to establish a connection with the Department of Labor for our clients to hopefully get their issues resolved and moving. And we've had some success. So if you're in a situation where your application is just stuck, you've called and called, maybe even written to them and gotten no response, and you're not really sure why you're not getting your benefits, please give us a call. We may be able to find out some information for you and try to resolve your case. And we've had some success with a few clients, and they've gotten their benefits sooner than they would have without our assistance.
That actually does sound great. So for our viewers, unfortunately, this is for Maryland residents only, as we are Maryland Legal Aid. So just moving on, for people who are currently on unemployment insurance, I think one common question I do also get is what income do they report? Do they report the gross or do they report net? What's the difference here?
Right. So just to backtrack for 1 minute, it's not only if you're a Maryland resident. If you live in Virginia, for example, but work in Maryland primarily, you would likely apply through the Maryland Department of Labor, and we can assist those folks as well. So
that sounds great. I did not know that.
Yeah. So as long as you go through Maryland Department of Labor, we can likely assist you. Yeah. So back to your original question. So the difference between gross so when you're reporting your weekly wages, you have to report your gross wages, not your net wages. So before taxes, whatever you make before taxes, that's what gets reported to the Maryland Department of Labor, not what you get after taxes. So just make sure to do that. The importance of being accurate in your weekly certifications is that you're essentially, even if you do it online, you're essentially signing something that says that you agree, and you're agreeing through the penalty of perjury to tell the truth. So if they find out that you're purposefully deceiving them, that could lead to some bad civil consequences and potentially criminal liability as well.
Right. So now that we're starting to reopen a little bit, people are, going back to work, but, the job market is still not very stable. So what if I was on unemployment insurance and then I took before my 39 weeks run out, and I took a job for a couple of weeks here and there. So, I can't certify anymore, but then I lost my job. So do we need to reapply, or is there a way to just reopen my old claim?
Right. So that's a great question. And a lot of folks are in that boat. The short answer is you need to reopen your claim. Let's say I'm applying for unemployment for the first time today. So today is the 11th, it's a Tuesday. If I applied today, even if I lost my job last week, my benefit year would begin on Sunday. Okay. So, and my benefit year obviously lasts 1 full year. And in that year, if you apply for unemployment, then you get off unemployment and you want to get back on unemployment, you just reopen your claim for that year. You don't have to start a new application. And in some ways, that's very convenient, especially now if Beacon works like it's supposed to. You can just click through, hit reopen, fill out a few questions, and your claim is active again. And as long as you're doing weekly certifications and you're eligible, you should start getting the benefits. Especially if you saved your debit card, don't lose that debit card. Even if you think you're never going to apply for unemployment again, just hang on to it. It can be a pain to get a new one. It's possible, but not ideal. So yeah, within your benefit year, you reopen your claim. After your benefit year expires, then you restart a new application. That's the short answer.
All right. So I also hear a lot of clients worry about this overpayment notice. What is that? How does that happen? And what can we do?
Right. So overpayments and even disqualifications were quite the pain. The real way to resolve it is someone from Department of Labor needs to go into the system and fix it. The way overpayments happen is if you're familiar with any public benefit, it all happens sort of similarly. You're receiving a public benefit. At the same time, you perhaps were getting other income, or you weren't actually eligible for that benefit, and Department of Labor only found out a few weeks later, and they've already sent you the money. That those kinds of things are what causes an overpayment. You were given more money than you were entitled to. With unemployment, the overpayment system is quite unforgiving. You have to not only show that it wasn't your fault, the overpayment wasn't caused because of something you did. You also have to show basically that you'll never be able to pay it back. So you're, permanent disability, for example, you'll never be able to go back to work, make enough money to pay them back. So it's a very high bar, and we've seen very few people be able to get a waiver or unemployment overpayment to get the overpayment removed. So you want to be very careful. Since we're on the subject, I will mention currently we're seeing some folks with overpayments because they received regular unemployment benefits and PUA. You're only entitled to one or the other. You can't collect both. Unfortunately, the Department of Labor hasn't programmed their system to prevent that from happening, right? So if you've already been sent regular unemployment, why would the system even let you access PUA? That's a great question, and I don't have a good answer for that, but it has happened in at least a handful of instances where folks have received both benefits for the same week, and they have to give one of them back, just depending on what you're eligible for. And they've been getting overpayment notices. And the one big issue with that is once there's an overpayment on your account, you can't get any benefits until that overpayment is resolved. So that's causing a lot of problems for folks who really got the overpayment through no fault of their own. The department's just sending out double benefits. So the best way to resolve that is to pay it back as soon as possible. So if you get double benefits, if you think you're getting more than what you think you're owed for that week, if you at all possible, try not to spend it. They'll likely ask for it back.
All right, thank you for that. And we're getting close to answering our live questions, or rather questions people have been asking in comment section when we started. But just one last question from me though. What happens when you're done with the 39 weeks?
Right.
Is there anything?
That's hopefully the economy improves. No. So when you're done with the 39 weeks, you essentially are paid all benefits you're owed for that benefit year. So you have to essentially find a job, become eligible again, and then reapply. So yeah, in a 52-week period, you can only get 39 weeks of benefits. After that, you can reapply, and if you're eligible again, and really that means having found a job and paid into the system. Generally speaking, that's the answer, which is not a great answer, I understand, but yeah. Hopefully, knock on wood, we're not in that situation.
Absolutely. So that's all the questions I've gotten before we went live today. So now we're going to go to Attorney Megan McDermott with live questions from the audience.
Thanks, Cindy. Not too many questions for you, Sunny, but one client asked, the client was working in a barbershop prior to COVID. The barbershop closed and now it's reopening. This person is in their 60s. They have an autoimmune condition, so they're nervous about going back because of their health concerns. They want to know if they can still receive unemployment, even though they've been offered their job back.
Right, so this is going to be an increasingly common issue as we start to reopen and continue reopening. It's going to be a lawyer answer, which is maybe. It's a case-by-case situation, essentially. The best answer I can give is apply for unemployment, and if you get denied, appeal it. You have 15 days to file an appeal. You're entitled to an attorney and a hearing, a telephone hearing, typically, where you can present your side of the story, witnesses, documents, etc. There is potentially an argument that because of COVID, it's not suitable for you to return to work. You're putting your health in danger. You're putting yourself in danger, and it's unreasonable for your employer to ask you to do that. So we have made those arguments before and have been somewhat successful. I say somewhat successful because we were able to get client benefits. There was just a small penalty issued. The client wasn't able to access benefits for 8 weeks, but after that, they will get the full 39 weeks if they need it. So it's not the worst penalty in the world for sure. But yeah, if you have a good reason for why you can't return to work, including, you might, for you, contracting COVID could be life or death. I think that's a good reason, and we have, and we would continue to make that argument on behalf of our clients. So if you don't want to go back to work and you refuse to return, go ahead and apply for unemployment. If you get denied, appeal it and make your case at the hearing.
Okay, and then sort of similar question. Say this person did go back to work, and once they were there, they realized that their employer wasn't taking appropriate safety precautions. People weren't wearing masks or weren't social distancing. So the individual quits. If they quit in that environment, are they able to apply for and are they eligible for unemployment?
Right. So that's also a good question. And the answer is maybe. It depends. It's a very fact-specific, circumstance by circumstance situation. But the client I mentioned earlier was a similar case. And like I said, we were able to get that client benefits. So if the employer is not following CDC guidelines, governor's guidelines, Department of Health's guidelines, and unreasonably putting people in danger of contracting COVID, and you have a good reason to fear, it's not just a general anxiety of getting COVID, but a specific, a reasonable fear of getting COVID. All those things combined, I think, do make for a good argument that you should get unemployment benefits. Now, of course, Maryland is an at-will state. So if your employer terminates you and you're not union, it's not retaliation, discrimination, et cetera, they are allowed to terminate your employment, but that shouldn't stop you from collecting unemployment benefits. So apply. If you get denied, appeal it.
Okay. And can you clarify, Sunny, both the 39 weeks and the eligibility for non-traditional workers, both of those things are extended through the end of this calendar year. Is that right?
Correct. So through the end of the calendar year, you're eligible for PUA, and you will get at least 26 weeks, but potentially 39 weeks. Maryland just announced, I want to say a week ago, that they've extended benefits to 39 weeks. So that might be available even beyond the end of the year. It just sort of depends on what program you fall into.
Okay, great. And then one final question is, what is Maryland Legal Aid's role in all of this? So if people need help with unemployment benefits, how does legal aid help?
Right. So we're sort of there. We do our bread and butter is helping folks with appeals. So not only they get initial denial and they appeal it, and we represent them at the telephone hearing, but oftentimes we appeal the case as high as we need to get a good result for the client. We've taken cases all the way up to Court of Appeals. So we assist clients in getting the benefits, but we've also, like I was talking to Cindy about, try to make some inroads with the Department of Labor to try to resolve cases that don't need to be appealed. They just need to progress. They're just sitting there. So we provide advice, provide representation, and try to do some policy work as well within our confines of our funders.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sunny. And those are all of my questions that we received. I did want to read out, I posted in the comments a phone number and an email address where you can reach us. You can also go to Maryland Legal Aid's website for more information. But for those who might have some challenges reading, the phone number is 443-451-2805, or you can email lawyer@md, like Maryland, lab.org. So lawyer@mdlab, all one word, .org. And then we'll bring Cindy back to wrap up.
And I'm back. Thank you, Megan. Do we want to talk about your presentation tonight real quick?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Cindy. So I'll be presenting another live stream on Facebook on Baltimore County Public Library's Facebook page this evening at 6. I'll be sharing some of Sunny's great information. We'll be talking also about paid leave, expungements, evictions, and taking questions there as well. If anyone watching wants to watch, or if you know you have friends or family who might be interested, please send them over to Baltimore County Public Library's Facebook page at 6 p.m. tonight.
Right. Thank you so much. So to our audiences, thank you so much for joining me today. Next week, I will be talking with our housing law expert, Attorney Carwella Kamei, to answer your questions about housing issues. So next week, we're going to be focused on tenants facing evictions. So if you do have questions about that and you want to get those questions into us right away, you can email us or drop us a comment down below or private message us on our Legal Aid Facebook account. So that's all I have today. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of the week.